The iPad is one of Apple's most iconic devices ever created. And while iPads have kind of a practical use case, some people want more. They want macOS on the iPad. Now, while Apple has been trying to satisfy their customers with desktop class features such as customizable toolbar items, stage manager, and so much more, iPadOS has been quite lacking that people want Apple to just straight up put macOS on the iPad. Now, Apple does not want this to happen, and there are 3 reasons why Apple does not want this to happen. And the last reason is the number 1 reason why Apple does not want macOS on the iPad, so stay tuned to see what all 3 reasons are. But first, I'd like to thank UPDF for sponsoring this video. Before I found UPDF, I thought PDFs were just one of the worst files ever created with really bad compatibility. That's because I used the built-in PDF editor in macOS, and that is by far one of the most limiting things ever. PDFs are one of the most common file formats ever, and every industry uses them in some way or another. UPDF makes dealing with PDFs a lot easier, whether you're on macOS or even iPadOS, or even Windows or Android. It is a direct competitor to Adobe Acrobat, and it is the perfect PDF editor on Apple platforms. You see, other PDF editors like Adobe Acrobat are very expensive and don't often get updated, and other ones require Rosetta to run. Now let's take a look at some nice UPDF features. I can edit whatever I want, including images, or I can even add my own images. I could also change some of the text. If I don't believe Apple is going to finish their journey in 2030, I could say 2035 if I wanted to. And it's pretty simple. All I gotta do is save it, and now it is now in this PDF file. If I open it in Apple Preview right here, you can see it's been corrected to 2035. And if you're wanting to comment on this PDF, it's very easy to express your ideas with many of the stickers, stamps, and even signatures. With stickers, you can add whatever stickers you want to decorate it, and Adobe Acrobat doesn't have many of these stickers. And if I wanted to tell people that I revised this document, I can also do this as well, and I can also ask people to sign this document. And now with signatures, it's incredibly easy to add my signature, and I can also reuse it later. I could simply just type my name if I wanted to. However, that looks nothing like my signature, so I could just go into here, use my mouse to write it, and I can use that. However, that doesn't look really nice. I could also use my trackpad to create a signature. All I gotta do is click somewhere to begin, and then just write my name using the trackpad. And there we go. If I wanted the signature, all I gotta do is press the spacebar or any other key, and then press create. And I can just add the signature however I want. And there it is. I signed right there just like I wanted myself to. And lastly, I like to talk about object character recognition, which is a really cool feature inside of UPDF. Simply by clicking this button right here, I could take any image and I could actually edit this text however I like. So let me show you. So if I click Perform OCR, it takes the text, and going into edit mode, I can make it say whatever I want. And it chooses the best font possible. So if you want to quickly edit text and images, this is the best way to do it. I generally like UPDF, and I believe that if you deal with PDFs a lot, it is the best tool with working with them. It is cheaper than Adobe Acrobat and offers everything you would like, plus more. You can download UPDF on any Mac, Windows, Android, iPhone, or even the topic of today's videos, iPad, down in the description down below. And now let's get back to talking about iPad. Now the first reason is product fragmentation. So Apple is a company, and at the end of the day, their goal is to make as much money as possible. Apple essentially wants you to buy their Macs and their iPads. If they were to just put macOS on the iPad, that would cannibalize on Mac sales. Now, while this would make the iPad a supercomputer, this is not the most financially responsible idea. Also, not to mention that macOS is nowhere near as touch optimized as iPadOS. Apple will need to do optimization on macOS to make the operating system more touch friendly. Now, this would be one of the most controversial things Apple would do, because Apple will make things bigger. Also, if Apple were to put macOS on the iPad, what would the point of iPadOS be? Yes, it probably is a lot more better optimized than macOS, but macOS is more designed for the mouse. Meanwhile, iPad is designed for touch. Now, while you can connect keyboard and mice to the iPad, it obviously is not the best thing for Apple to do, mainly because iPads are touch first, and if the average kid just saw macOS on the iPad, a non-touch first operating system, they would just be straight up confused and maybe not want an iPad anymore. To summarize this first point, Apple will want people to buy both the Mac and the iPad, and what would the point of iPadOS be? And what if a kid accidentally installed macOS? How would they feel about having a non-touch first friendly operating system. It's just not touch friendly. Alright, the second reason is the iPad would be in a huge identity crisis. So I feel in order to fix this, Apple needs to put iPadOS on the Mac. And Apple would probably not want to do that either. And even if they did, both a Mac and an iPad would be in an identity crisis. So the iPad is more geared towards younger people and for those who want a media consumption device. Or maybe for a device to do things on the go, for like on the airplane or something. Do you also draw on the iPad and you don't want to lug around a huge MacBook? Now, while there are some pro features, they're not as optimized as with the Mac. And the Mac's more geared towards professionals and those who want to do more hardcore things like video editing, programming, that an iPad probably would not be capable of doing, mainly because of macOS. And if we were to just shove macOS on the iPad, that basically just affects the iPad's identity. It just causes a huge identity crisis. It kind of already does, to be honest, and if we just shove macOS, it just makes it worse. What would the iPad be for? Is it a computer that you do everything on? Is it a computer that you do your video editing? Do you just watch Cocomelon on it all the time? Like, it's just so confusing. Like, do you just play video games on the iPad all the time? Like, the iPad is definitely capable of running macOS, and this other reason is the main contributing factor why Apple has not done it yet. But first, we need to go through Apple Park and go straight into the void of Apple Park to find out the number one reason why Apple will not put macOS on the iPad is the 30% cut. Now, earlier in this video, we did say before that Apple loves their money just like every other company does. But we haven't gotten as deep as the 30% cut. The 30% cut is across all Apple platforms, including the iPhone, iPad, Mac, Apple Watch, Apple TV, basically everything that Apple has created has the 30% cut applied to it. But you may be wondering, you said the Mac, right? Well, you may have forgot something because you forgot that the Mac has sideloading on it. Now, there are no App Store rules preventing developers from just adding in-app purchases to the apps without using the App Store. In fact, if you have a sideloaded app on the Mac, you don't need to worry about any of this at all. You could just do whatever you want. And if Apple were to either remove sideloading or enforce the 30% cut on apps distributed outside of the Mac App Store, there would just be a whole lot of controversy and just a whole lot of people switching to Windows, just making the Mac null and void, basically. And Apple doesn't want that. They still want the Mac to be relevant. Now, the 30% cut helps Apple make money while you still own the device. If you own a Mac, you just buy the Mac once, and then Apple could theoretically just not make any more money off of you. However, if you buy an iPad, Apple could constantly just make money off of in-app purchases, and it's probably the best way for them to continue making money off of you. Now, Apple is trying to shift over to a subscription-focused company with Apple Music, iCloud, Apple TV Plus. They're just trying to do whatever they can to squeeze as much money out of you as possible from the Mac. And they're trying to encourage developers to use the Mac App Store over other distribution methods. And however, it doesn't seem to be working right now, then Apple may need to step up their game. In fact, in macOS Sequoia, there are some exemptions in place. For example, with app groups, basically require developers to have their Mac in the Mac App Store in order to have universal apps, which are apps that run on iPhone, iPad, and Mac, like ones myself with Willy Widgets and Willy Study. And it's just a security measure put into place just to make sure apps are who they say they are and what files they can access. And the 30% cut is the one thing holding Apple back from just shoving macOS on the iPad. But if Apple were to just remove the 30% cut, they wouldn't need to worry about any of this. And in fact, a lot of people are trying to force Apple to either add sideloading to the iPhone and iPad, or just straight up remove the 30% cut, or just allow third-party payment methods inside of the App Store. Now, if Apple were to theoretically remove all of that, could macOS go on the iPad? No, I do not think so, for the previous reasons, but this is by far the darkest reason as to why. Now, I hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching. Comment, like, subscribe, share this with your friends. Check out UPDF down in the description down below, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!